What I'd like to do is talk to you about three things. Culture, what the NFSP has done in the past year to help you as postmasters, and what we plan to do in the coming year. Once obviously I've finished, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have. What I would sort of say is, for those of you who this is your first time at conference, welcome. 2010 was my first time at conference, and that's a wee while ago. I was reminded at the time just how important it was for you as delegates to engage as much as possible. One of the things that struck me on the very first time that I came to conference is I was also encouraged to get on the stage and ask questions. When I did, and I said who I was, I said what branch I was, and also which region I was, and that this was my first time at conference, Andrew Gulhuli, what would happen? You would get a round of applause. And I would like to encourage that tradition so that you who are here for the first time, you are amongst friends. We are all colleagues together, and therefore do not be afraid or nervous about asking a question. Now, I'll give you a little tip. What I did all those years ago is I would write down what my question was. And then when I stood up, I at least knew what I was going to sort of say. It gave me the confidence to be able to do that. So whatever it is that gives you the confidence to be able to stand up and ask your question, feel free to do that. And as I say, we thoroughly encourage you to do that. So culture. Culture within an organisation is vital. If that culture is the right one, then the likelihood is that that organisation will be effective. But if it's the wrong one, then the likelihood is that the organisation will not be as effective as it would hope to be. It's easy for us as postmasters to sit here today and criticise the culture of the post office. After all, the events around the Horizon scandal show that as a business, its culture towards postmasters, their assistants, and also Crown Office employees led to the injustices currently being considered at the Horizon inquiry. This resulted in the ruining of so many people's lives. Time after time, the inquiry has heard about the cultural attitude from all levels of post office was to view postmasters as subordinate. Back in 2019, Nick Reid, when he was the newly appointed Chief Executive Officer of the Post Office, stated that he wanted to reset the relationship. He was aware that the culture of the Post Office was wrong in the past and promised a different corporate attitude going forward. 4 years after that statement, the results of the 2023 Postmaster Survey found the following. You as postmasters felt less valued and supported by the Post Office, that Post Office were not genuinely trying to improve the relationship, that Post Office does not interact with postmasters in a purposeful and engaging way, that Post Office does not have the best interests of postmasters at heart, and there is a lack of confidence about the business decisions Post Office make and how they impact postmasters' businesses. Do you as a postmaster today feel that the relationship between the Post Office and postmasters has been reset? If the answer is no, then who is responsible? Is it purely Nick Reid's responsibility? Or is it the chair of the Post Office who is accountable? What about the board or the senior leadership team at Post Office? Could it even be the employees of Post Office who are responsible for the culture not being reset? Is it possible that every single individual employee of Post Office who is collectively responsible for that cultural reset not happening? What should that culture change look like? And that's the big question that I'm sure it is a question that all of us as postmasters and owner-operators of Post Office want answered. We cannot ignore that we as postmasters are conservative with a small c. We are not militant in our approach to our dealings with the Post Office. Quite simply, as postmasters, we want to have a collaborative and mutually beneficial relationship with the Post Office. As investors in the network, we want the Post Office to not just survive, we actually want it to thrive. We want to work with the Post Office to face the competition and the changing customer experience. What we don't want is a continuation of the imbalance between the Post Office and us as postmasters. Too often, decisions are being made between government and the Post Office that directly impact us, yet as investors, we are not consulted. We are directed. Should we as investors be treated in such a way by Post Office or our de facto business partners, the government? There is still a perception that the business is currently being run for the benefit of a few rather than the benefit of the many. However, the Post Office has a collective social purpose to work for the benefit of communities the length and breadth of the country. Human nature, as it is, makes it very easy to point the finger of blame and responsibility towards others. It's very easy for us to expect others to sort themselves out because they are the ones with the problem, not us. But is that right? Is it everyone else who's got to sort things out? Is it a case that we as individuals are all okay? Do we have a view of ourselves that it's not us that are the problem because our individual or collective culture as postmasters is just A-okay? Colleagues, let us be grown up. Let's be mature. Let us be open and transparent and admit that if our culture is not okay, then the relationship that we require with the Post Office will never be where it needs to be. I don't say this as a blame game, rather a recognition that we are responsible for how we behave and how that impacts upon others. Therefore, our culture needs to stand up to scrutiny, or as a network, we won't be able to face the challenges that are undoubtedly coming our way. We need to work together. Colleagues, I have to highlight that there is a level of toxicity in the network which is unhelpful. Thankfully, it comes from just a small section of the network and some on the periphery. However, more and more colleagues are coming to me concerned that the comments across social media do not resonate with them. The negativity among some does not speak for them. There is, I believe, a silent majority across the network that are being drowned out by a very vocal and toxic minority. Has anyone heard of the term sea lining? Well, the sea liner feigns ignorance and politeness while making relentless demands for answers and evidence, while often ignoring or sidestepping any evidence the target has already presented, and it's important to emphasize the word target. They seek answers and evidence under the guise of just trying to have a debate, so that when the target is eventually provoked into an angry response, the sea liner can act as the aggrieved party and the target presented as closed-minded and unreasonable. It has been described as incessant bad faith invitations to engage in debate. The sea liner rarely acts alone, but acts as part of a group who then pile on when the target responds. Colleagues, this is happening today and is an example of poor culture. Remember, freedom of speech is a responsibility just as much as it is a right. Harassment or bullying of this nature has no place within the network and definitely not in the NFSP. I earlier emphasised the culture of the Post Office being the responsibility of all Post Office employees. Therefore, the same is true of the NFSP. We are all the NFSP. We are all responsible for the culture of the NFSP, not just myself. I'm not talking here about blind submission. Rather, constructive challenge is to be welcomed and it is healthy. But the very direct and deliberate undermining of the NFSP by a few in the shape of destructive challenges, both to the detriment of you, the postmaster, and it is to the benefit of both the Post Office and government. To be clear, the bedrock of who we are as an organisation has not changed since our formation back in 1897. The aim then is the same as it is today, to improve the conditions under which postmasters labour and to undertake the advancement of our interests by all legitimate and honourable means. Therefore, let me speak to the silent majority and reiterate the vision and mission of the NFSP today. Our vision is to be the collective voice of Post Office operators, offering members representation, support and solutions to realise the full potential of their businesses. Our mission is to provide a membership-led organisation supporting members to operate Post Office and retail outlets, to represent their interests at every level of policy and decision-making. We offer you as postmasters an opportunity to belong to and take part in a community working together for a more successful future. Colleagues, you as postmasters have not benefited from the Post Office you deserve. Rather, you have suffered due to an organisation looking after and rewarding itself for managed decline. This is why we are investing so much of our time in the Horizon Inquiry, because this is our opportunity to ensure that the governance of the Post Office is finally changed so that your interests are central to the decision-making process. With this in mind, the board of the NFSP will begin discussions in June about how we can implement a culture committee consisting of members across the regions to help improve the culture of the network and the NFSP. We will seek your views via a survey at the end of June. Colleagues, we have to get this right. At this point, I wish to focus on some positives and provide a brief overview of just some of what the NFSP has done to support you as postmasters over the past year. From a political perspective, colleagues were rightly concerned that the network would lose yet another government work stream, as it was announced that the DVLA were looking to remove the taxing of vehicles from the Post Office. This would have removed around 6 million customers and over £3 million in revenue. And with the help of colleagues around the country, the NFSP were able to play our part on your behalf to ensure that these vital services remain available over the counter. Not only that, but remuneration increased by 2/3 to £5.4 million. With your help, 100,000 customers signed our petition, which was handed into 10 Downing Street. This is what we can achieve when we all work together by supporting the activities of the NFSP. Colleagues have been understandably concerned about the growing drop and collect network that the Post Office is rolling out. To be clear, this programme is supported by the government and ensures that Post Office keeps its network numbers above the required 11,500. So there will be no appetite within government or Post Office to halt it. Therefore, the best that we can do is ensure minimal impact to the existing network, and where there is provable impact, seek support and redress from Post Office. With this in mind, we have now an agreed process with the Post Office where we can raise a challenge on behalf of postmasters. Keith Richards leads this work, so if you have any concerns, please speak to him over the next few days. Overall, we have helped and supported 3,800 postmasters between April 23 and March 24. This is in part due to the central recording we now collate on a weekly basis from our board of directors, our branch and regional secretaries, along with our showroom staff via the mail segregation and retail teams. So a massive thank you to everyone who offers help and support. Given the significance of the Horizon Inquiry and the impact it has had, we are determined to ensure that there is a small group of trained NFSP colleagues around the country who can offer support to colleagues in their time of most need. This is now taking place, and there are now 6 trained advocacy representatives around the country offering support where required. This work is naturally strictly confidential, but I can provide some anonymised figures. Last year, there were an average of 28 risk-based branch assurance visits or audits per month. However, out of the 340 risk-based audits, only 31 colleagues have come to the NFSP to ask for help. So where have the other 309 colleagues gone for help? This is why it's so important, because we simply cannot have colleagues suffering in silence today. Colleagues may have noticed we launched our very own podcast entitled The Post Report, Stories from the Post Office Network. The number of episodes is now growing, along with an audience via YouTube. There are plans for many more throughout the coming year, including one on conference, so hopefully via Steve Bailey, some of you will be included in the edition that is currently being filmed. As you may have seen last month, John Follenfant, where are you, John? Oh, you're there. Is stepping down as members editor of the Sub-Postmaster magazine after 8 years. I'd like to thank you, John, for all the hard work that you've done over those years and for providing so much insight to members, and we wish you all the very best in your retirement. I'm delighted to announce Tim Allen from Kington Post Office and John Bumfrey of Evesham Post Office have agreed to share the duties of members editor, and we look forward to working with them both. I know Tim is here. John unfortunately couldn't make it. Tim's there. Just stand up and give a wave, Tim. Tim is our new members editor. This has been another difficult year for colleagues classed as hard to place, with the Post Office coming to the NFSP in February of 2023, stating that they were going to change the terms and conditions around their exit from the network. This resulted in the leavers payment they would be due for exiting the network being reduced from 26 months down to 12 months. On average, this means that colleagues would be losing around £43,000. We fought hard during the year, including freedom of information requests and legal support, but Post Office's attitude refused to change due to the decision coming from the government and the Post Office board. Over the last year, our branch and regional meetings have grown and evolved. We realise that colleagues are busy with work and family, so can't be in two places at once. But you still want to know what is going on and be involved. There was at least one meeting held per week throughout the year, and more of them are now being held online or are actually a hybrid meeting where they're being streamed for those who can't attend. We will continue to evolve this through the coming year. And added to this, these branch and regional meetings, there was also national meetings after each of the board meetings to update colleagues on what was discussed. Thanks again to everyone who joined in and engaged with the NFSP in this way. Your views are vital and enable those regional volunteers to understand the thoughts of colleagues around the country. At this point, I must reiterate to branch and regional secretaries the importance of taking minutes of the meeting and, with Shorham's help, distributing these minutes around the branch and regions so that those colleagues who are unable to attend can read in their own time what was discussed. So that was last year. So what are we aiming to do in the coming year on your behalf? Back in 2010, the intention of the NFSP was for the business to be mutualised. However, what was important was the mutualisation should only take place when the business was in the financial position to be able to do so. What we know is that out of the current 11,600 outlets in the network, around 8,500 are full-time, full-service outlets, with the remainder being part-time limited service outlets. The ongoing press reports since the turn of the year as a result of the ITV programme Mr Bates versus the Post Office shows not only the internal divisions within government departments, but also from the Post Office board and senior management. This internal conflict does not benefit the business in any way, nor does it provide any leadership stability. As such, there is a requirement for significant change in the governance structure of the Post Office as a business. Some suggest mutualisation as a solution, and we agree, but only when the time is right. However, we have to think of what positivity there would be about bringing together such a diverse group of people with entrenched views and expect them to work collaboratively for the good of the newly mutualised business from day one. I honestly believe that if that happened, if the Post Office was mutualised on the 31st of May, it would be bankrupt on the 1st of June. The Oversight Committee is a way in which governance of the Post Office can be improved whilst allowing these diverse groups to iron out their differences in readiness for the mutualisation once there is stability in the culture and the financial performance of the business. Whilst there are serious concerns over the current board and senior management, the Oversight Committee would not remove the need for a board nor senior management, but would ensure there is a greater level of governance that has so far been lacking, which has led to the events of the past and indeed the events of the present. Importantly, the key aims of the Oversight Committee would be to challenge the strategy of the Post Office, to work with government and Post Office to secure the future of the network, to enhance the role of government as a sole shareholder, to prove that a diverse group of people can work together for the needs of the network prior to mutualisation, to ensure the government uses the powers it has to improve the culture at the Post Office, and most importantly, rebuild trust in the Post Office brand, and to ensure that the Post Office achieves the goals of its long-term strategy. This is a huge body of work and not a simple task, but it's important that the needs of those who own and operate the Post Office network are very much involved at a strategic level, and are able to scrutinise the decisions of the Post Office board and also challenge the government in terms of its strategy and financial commitment to the business. However, we must not ignore the needs of our Post Office colleagues who have families to provide for and mortgages to pay just like us. We can no longer have a them and us scenario, but we have to be very much aligned. But what about the year ahead? Another key area that we need to work on this year is to link the NFSP non-executive directors with product directors of Post Office. Importantly, we want to involve you as members in this. There is vast experience out in the network, and it is a resource that can be of intrinsic benefit to the network as a whole. The aim of this body of work is to bring the Postmasters' insight into strategic planning of the product directors. This will be across areas such as banking, mails, travel, cash and stock management, and the development of NBIT as examples. This will involve the NFSP director working with a small group of postmasters and liaising with the Post Office product director in that area. A synopsis of these discussions will then be fed back to the network so that everybody is aware. Another area we want to focus on is improving the number and content of branch and regional meetings. Postmasters are busy, so they are not going to waste their time coming to the same old, where individuals complain and blame the Post Office for everything. The time that you spend is important, so it has to be worth your while attending. The point and purpose of branch and regional meetings is supposed to offer support, training, and a sense of community. As such, we are asking branch and regional secretaries to hold hybrid meetings in different locations so more people can attend in person. And for those who have a distance to travel, there will be option of joining in online. These meetings should be minuted and distributed to all members in the branch or region. For those regions with no regional secretary, we're going to trial a regional coordinator who will support the regional director to ensure that engagement with members in that region is improved, and that any meeting arranged will be designed for the benefit of postmasters in terms of taking their business forward. As already mentioned, our advocacy team is now fully functioning, and we aim to increase the awareness of the team. Our hope is that no one actually needs the team, but we are pragmatic that things from time to time can go wrong. When that happens, colleagues need to know that they have someone they can contact for help and support. Naturally, this is on a strictly confidential basis for obvious reasons. Ultimately, we want to develop a business case for a potential arbitrary service to be introduced so that rather than the Post Office acting as judge, jury and executioner, there is a much fairer way to resolve complex cases rather than via the courts. Via the negotiating and engagement team, our aim this year is to work on the back office payments so that you are properly remunerated for the work you do. Whilst we, like you, are disappointed in how much the Post Office are paying for what they call operational excellence, that won't begin until, obviously, September of this year. Let me be clear, this is the start of the process to work with the Post Office to drive down costs and collectively share in those savings. With your help, there will be more available than the potential $16 million that is currently on offer. As a member-led organisation, if there are any areas in where we can drive down the Post Office's costs and share in the savings, I'd like you to work with us to identify them. As I've already mentioned, we held events in the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly last year, and we aim to do so again this year along with Northern Ireland. So please encourage as many of your colleagues to engage with their local MPs or their MSPs, their MLAs or their MSs, as we really want to sort of garner as much interest from around the UK. There will also be undoubtedly be more Westminster Hall debates covering many aspects that will resonate with you as investing postmasters. All I can ask of you is to work with our Public Affairs Manager, Ruth Buckley-Salmon, so that you can attend these important debates and speak with politicians. I should add to this, if you're writing to your MP, please also copy in Ruth so that we can be aware of your issue and offer support where we can. Colleagues, you're not on your own in this. We're stronger together as a collective. Included in Ruth's work is the monthly remuneration survey, and I would ask you to engage with that as much as possible, as it's a real barometer to what is happening in the network. If you don't tell us, we can't always know. We cannot ignore that we live in a digital age, and therefore it is important for all of us as independent business people that we market our businesses to our local communities as best we possibly can. We need to keep them up to date with our products and services. Dipesh Moda of Edgware Road Post Office is a phenomenal advocate of Google My Business. And I'm going to embarrass him now by sort of saying that he has over 2,400 reviews, which provide him with a score of 4.9 out of 5. Indeed, one of his customers said this: "I visited this post office and was served by the lovely counter clerk." I'm sure that was Dipesh. "It was the first time I can honestly say I enjoyed a post office visit because they were very warm and dealt with my queries in a very understanding and calm way. Thank you so much. Your kindness has stayed with me." That's the kind of quality of service we all need to be providing. In the digital age, we need our customers to look at us as a place they want to come to rather than have to. As such, we want to engage with more people like Dipesh to try and understand the barriers that are preventing more colleagues from not only being digitally aware, but actually digitally engaged. We want to help you market your business and put the best foot forward, as it were, because there's a simple idiom: without customers, we don't have a business. If you want help, please speak with Dipesh and Elizabeth, our marketing lead. Ultimately, keeping you abreast of all that is going on can lead to communication overload due to the various and multitude ways in which we communicate in the modern world. Some people only read the Postmaster magazine, whilst others want information via social media or email. We've had changes in our communication team over the last year, but we now have the wonderful communication manager in place, and he, along with Ciara, when she's back from maternity leave, will be keeping you up to date with events across the post office world. Already we're seeing improvements in relation to how members are kept informed about the meetings that we have with the Postal Affairs Minister, the Department of Business and Trade, our NET meetings with the Post Office, and of course our board meetings. For those of you who have not picked up on this, after our 4 board meetings, we hold a national Teams meeting to update everyone who joins in what was discussed and to seek your views. With that in mind, I will advertise now that on the 25th of June, we will hold a national Teams meeting to provide an update of our board meeting. Within the communications plan for the year ahead is to really expand the podcast to tell your stories as postmasters. Obviously, we hear from how concerned you are that all the media interest around Horizon, the inquiry, is impacting the value of your business and its long-term viability. With that in mind, in November 2022, Retail Director Robert Clark came to West Linton to film our annual Christmas Lights Switch On extravaganza. This was to form the basis of a pilot podcast to explain the importance of postmasters at the centre of our communities, the length and breadth of the UK. We are looking for your stories, so if you would like to be involved, please speak to Steve. Finally, I cannot ignore the inquiry, and members need to be aware just how intrinsic to the coming year it will be. Phases 5 and 6 are planned to finish at the end of July, with a break in August, before hopefully concluding in September with Phase 7. So Wyn Williams will then take time to consider what he has heard throughout the phases and will publish his findings and recommendations some months later. How long that will take is pure speculation, but I fully expect this next financial year, up to March 25, to be dominated by the inquiry. Why do I take it so seriously? Simply because we have to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. Importantly, as a postmaster throughout this period, I want to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, because I want to know how much at risk my family and I were at losing everything. And I'm sure you all do too. So let me take us a step further, because it's important that I, as a former postmaster, a former colleague, say how sorry I am to all those victims, whether they're a postmaster, they were an assistant, or they were a Crown Office employee, for what they have gone through over such an extended period of time. I am glad that finally they are having their reputations restored and they have their redress as to their losses financially and otherwise provided. To conclude, ultimately, the postmaster's #1 priority is income, as mentioned earlier. Postmasters are conservative with a small c, and we are a pragmatic group dedicated to the needs of our communities. For the vast majority of postmasters, we want to get up in the morning, we want to open our post offices, serve our communities, pay our bills, and provide for all our families. We want to close our post offices and get on with our lives. However, we do want to be treated with respect by Post Office and government, irrespective of the political party which is actually forming government. The NFSP believe, via the programmes that we lay out today, we can work together with Post Office to make things better. We cannot do it on our own. We need your help, because to ensure that the NFSP of today has the right culture going forward will require your help and input. A united collective of postmasters working in and through the NFSP can ensure that whatever government is in power listens and understands the needs of over 7,000 small independent business people who own and operate the network of 11,500 post offices across the country. This united collective of postmasters can influence the Post Office for the good of the network. What the NFSP believe is we all want a mutually beneficial relationship with the Post Office and government. What we ask of you today is that you help us to achieve your goal. Thank you. It's one of these things where you get to that age where you need your glasses off to read and you need glasses on to see. So now I can see sort of where you are. Yeah, I can see us. It was just, I was just wondering if there was an electric current that suddenly kind of went there, because all of a sudden I hadn't even said anything. Would anyone like to ask me a question? But the hand sort of went up. So, yeah, Bhavna. Yeah.
Hi. Bhavna Desai, Northwest Region. Post Office and their culture, like you said, have made me cynical over the years. So my question is that how can we ensure that the Post Office isn't trying to undermine NFSP? I don't want Post Office to undermine NFSP by creating all these regional focus groups and 2 NED on board, and they can go to government and said, look, we're setting the relationship straight, everybody is joining the focus group, and here we're talking about 10 postmasters at a time. Respect will be worrying about their own businesses and their own type of businesses, whilst NFSP, talking to Post Office Limited or any other agencies, will be talking about 11,000 post offices. So how can we ensure that the Post Office Limited isn't trying to undermine us and going forward isn't going to take the need away from Postmaster of a supporting group and give the Postmaster the feeling that Post Office is listening to them, but in actual fact, they're only listening to 10 people, here, there, and anywhere. So that's my first part, and I know I'm being cheeky and just add on the second part is hard to place offices. How can the government or the Post Office do injustice in the straight face? All these postmasters for years have given them the service and done their best, and they've promised that they'll get X number of weeks like everybody else did, and now turned back and said, no, you're not going to get that. You're going to get even half of that. And even then, we might give you that, or we might not give you that. And whose fault is that? Even Post Office hasn't found the places to replace those offices, so it's not Postmaster's fault. So I've got 2 questions added into one.
So I think actually, in essence, they are actually intrinsically linked, because I think what's happened to the hard to place is actually an example of poor culture sort of within the Post Office. And the Post Office say that the culture has changed. The reality is, and I'm going to be very careful sort of what I say here, but there were supposed to be people who were coming to conference either today or tomorrow that we've actually had to say, I don't think it would be prudent for them to come, because it's the inquiry has shown that they were involved in this, they were involved in the past. They were involved in understanding and knowing that there was bugs, defects, and errors within the Horizon system, and they have now risen to senior level within the Post Office and are making decisions as far as postmasters are concerned today. How can we possibly have those 2 things done? As I highlighted, so back in 23, and obviously the 24 results have not been sort of published yet, so I've focused on the 23, and what it shows is that from a cultural perspective, that relationship has not gone forward, it's gone back, despite the fact that there are 2 postmaster non-executive directors on the board. I'm just thinking whether I should say what I'm about to say. As you know, some of you may sort of know, actually, the NFSP were in a meeting with the Post Office back in August of 21. And at that meeting, we were discussing many sort of different aspects. And as you know, to become a non-executive director, there was 3 criteria. And we discovered that actually one of the postmaster non-executive directors hadn't met that criteria. So we immediately started, highlighted that to the Post Office. We raised that. I eventually had to do a freedom of information request. I spoke to the Speak Up team. it was eventually partially upheld. Colleagues from London have come to me very concerned about something that's going on as well, leaflets going out and around, and I've raised that with the Post Office as well. So there's things that we're concerned about in relation to the Postmaster non-executive directors. If you want my personal opinion, I don't think a current Postmaster should be a Postmaster non-executive director. I think it's too much of a conflict of interest. A retired Postmaster who no longer has any skin in the game, absolutely. But I don't think it's possible for a Postmaster to actually be in a position on the board because they legally have to promote the interest of that business. Well, whose business are they going to promote first? And therefore, on that basis, they have to step out. They have to admit they've got a conflict of interest. And what we can see sort of over the last 4 years is the culture hasn't gone forward, the culture has gone back. And part of it, I believe, is because we have too many of the people who were involved in the past are still there at the Post Office today, making decisions as far as the Post Office is concerned. One of the things when you're talking about in relation to, as I highlighted to do with the non-executive directors of the NFSP working with the product directors, the reason why I want to do that is, and I've been trying to work this with the Post Office for a couple of years, is because I believe that it's fundamentally important. As I've said, so that actually the experience in this room is phenomenal. This is a resource that we should be tapping into. So therefore, it's really important that there is a constructed way in which the Post Office can actually engage with postmasters and they can actually understand our needs. That's vitally important. But it needs to be done, in essence, outside the remit of the Post Office, because the Post Office will only do what is convenient to it. One of the things that we keep on having sort of with the NET is we'll go to the Post Office and say that we've met with postmasters and they've told us X, Y, and Z. We take that to the Post Office and the Post Office turn around and say, well, we've spoken to Postmaster Group X and we've spoken to Group Postmaster here and they're all happy. They all think this is brilliant. So therefore, we're not going to listen to what you've got to say. We're going to do sort of what's over here. Now, the problem is I don't know what's being said on those groups. And that's no disrespect to sort of anybody in any way, shape or form, because I think it's vitally important that postmasters do speak to the Post Office and do have access. And what I'm proposing and what I'm putting forward is a thought process. I'll rephrase that. What the NFSP are doing and what the NFSP are promoting is actually a constructive way in which it can actually be done. But it's not being controlled by the Post Office. It is being, in essence, controlled by you as postmasters, and not something that the Post Office can shut down, or they can actually come along and orchestrate it in a way that's convenient to them. As far as hard to place is concerned, again, how can you sort of say that you want to reset the culture of the relationship with postmasters and come along where you've got individuals who are well beyond retirement age or have underlying health issues, and unfortunately some colleagues have passed away, and say, you're not getting your 26 months, you're only getting 12. And refuse, and I mean refuse, to negotiate, refuse to discuss, and literally dictate. How can you say that you're actually postmaster focused and treat postmasters like that? Might be only 105 postmasters, but these are individual people with families. And that's an example of what's going on. So we need to be working together as a collective, and I believe firmly that if we work together as a collective, over 7,000 individual post offices around the country, postmasters around the country, working together, in and through the NFSP, we can make a difference because people will start to will have to stand up and listen. The problem is there's too many voices. There's too many voices saying too many different things, and for various reasons. And really, we need to have that collective voice that actually people can listen to. So it's really important that we as a group work together rather than, because as far as the Post Office is concerned, the more we're fighting amongst ourselves, the better it is for them. And that's what they're doing, I believe. I believe that they're actually infiltrating that and actually sort of encouraging that. I honestly do believe. I've caught them too many times. Parvez.
Hi, Calum. Hi, Calum is from Northwest region. It's a follow-up of what Bhavna said, and I think in my region, most people are aware of this issue, which I'm going to say, NEDs. And you pointed that out. All due respects to them, we don't know what the hell they're doing. According to me, if they go for a board meeting, they should let the people in the Northwest know exactly what they've done or what has been discussed. Some things they can't tell us, but they can tell the other things. Last time I asked that question in my group chat, I was told they do X, Y, and Z. And I know and for sure that X, Y, and Z is by Tim, the representative. So why the duplication? If they're doing the same thing as Tim is doing, the regional director, then what the hell are these people doing? And if these people are doing a better job, then Tim should be out of the job then.
So that's the reason why we're promoting the Oversight Committee, and I think it's really important. I think the governance of the Post Office has to change, and it has to change for the better. The reason why the Horizon scandal took place, and I just want to, and I'm going to be very careful because there's a lot that I can't say. I can talk about stuff that's already in the public domain. I can't talk about anything that's about to go on or will happen in the future. And as a core participant, we obviously have information, and I've signed a non-disclosure agreement with the inquiry. But the reason it happened was because the governance of the Post Office by government just simply wasn't good enough. Too often we hear this phrase that the Post Office is arm's length from government. We only get involved in the strategy and the financing, but we also know that behind the scenes there is a lot of conversations that go on. There is nothing that the Department of Trade or BAYS or whatever it was in the past don't know about that's going on in the Post Office. But fundamentally, when we look at it, government ministers, senior civil servants, captains of industry in Post Office, Fujitsu and Royal Mail, and of course we cannot ignore the criminal justice system. When you look at that, let's be honest and let's be serious, that's actually the very leadership of the United Kingdom. There was fundamental problems and cultural problems at the very leadership of our country, and that's the reason why it happened. Okay? And what I'm looking to do is actually change the way that things are governed in the Post Office. I do believe we should be mutualised at the right time, and I'm sure there's obviously accountants here might be able to maybe say one or two things on that, but the reality is that a business needs stability in its marketplace, and it needs stability in its financial position to be able to move forward as a mutual business, okay? Because it needs to be able to raise the finance to be able to fund the programs that it wants to do. The problem is that the Post Office needs funding from government. It's just received £150 million to fund the legal costs in relation to the inquiry and the historical shortfall scheme. It's received hundreds of millions of pounds in relation to the development of the NBIP programme. It wouldn't be able to do that as a mutualised company. It wouldn't be able to raise the finance to be able to do it. That's why I believe that on the 1st of, if it was mutualised on the 31st, it'd be bankrupt on the 1st of June. But I do think that actually this is a way in which we can change the culture and bring in other voices. I mean, okay, over here on the left with the NFSP, the CW and Unite, I think they're important. We can't ignore them. We can't ignore our colleagues within the Post Office, and their representative bodies have an absolute right, and I would defend that. But here over on the right is really important as well, because what is it about the Post Office that's really amazing? It's got a social purpose, it's got a social value, and here it is here. So we need to bring those voices in as well, so that it's not just about profit, and we're not having a situation where a small number of people are orchestrating things for their own financial benefit. The Post Office has to be for the benefit of everyone, because it's owned by everyone, it's state-owned. And the problem is that we need to go beyond simply our Mail's business. We need to go simply beyond just deposits and withdrawals at banking. We need to go beyond travel. We need to be able to expand the range of services that we can provide, so that actually, as an organisation, we can, rather than us losing customers, we're starting to get customers back. And that's the whole reason we've got Darren coming along. He'll speak in shortly. Even though he's an Everton fan and I'm a Liverpool fan, I'll let him off for that. But the reality is that actually Timson's, the culture within Timson's, can show us exactly what we can be. There are organisations out there who understand culture, can get culture right. Darren is going to show us what good looks like, and we can do that. So I really honestly believe that if we can get the oversight committee up and running, it's a huge body of work. It's not going to be done in 5 minutes. But if we're all working together on it, I believe we can get it. And I fundamentally believe that we can change the whole culture within the post office. And it won't be just 2 people who are on the board for what, and I'm really being very careful because I don't like talking personally, and I certainly don't like attacking individuals. But I do believe that through this way, we can actually make a difference. And here's something. This is common on the continent. This 2-tier board is common on the continent. It's actually something that started in Germany after the Second World War, introduced by the Brits and the Americans and it spread over Europe. But it's just not within the UK. But it can be. And I believe we can do it, and I believe we can get it right. I've gone way beyond your question, but I needed to get that in. Mr. Sharma first, and then we'll get you. So this is just so you know, chartered accountant, and I was looking to him, as I was kind of putting that across. So I'm hoping he's going to stand up and say, "That's brilliant, Calum, it's fantastic. Yeah, you're on the right track." Not that I'm setting you up in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you. Thank you, Calum. Conference, Vyas Sharma, Wales District. I like the shaping of your future. I love it. But haven't we all done this throughout our lives? We have shaped the future of the post office. Some people even one of our colleagues stand in front of a bus in order to shape the future of the post office. Isn't it time? Isn't it a place? Isn't it the season now that we should stand up and say, let us do something to shape our future and not the post office future? Thank you, sir.
I mean, in essence, what I'm saying actually through my speech is, too often there's conversations that are going on between the government and the post office, and then they come to us, tell us exactly what's going to happen to our investment. And time after time, actually, I hear colleagues, and I don't know how you all feel, but I know how I feel because I'm dealing with it day in, day out. Is that there's more revelations come out from the post office, more revelations after more revelations after more revelations, and you just feel as if, actually, how much more of this can I actually take? And you feel as if, I'm a postmaster, I'm sorry. The fortunate thing is that whilst the feeling from the general public towards the post office is quite intense, their support of you as postmasters, the connection that you have with postmasters, is the reason why the post office is still in existence. If it had been any other business, and it wasn't a business like what you've got in the sense of that you're in your community, you're working in your community, you're known in your community, you're giving to your community. I was talking to a colleague who's just taken over the world's oldest post office in Sanker, which is actually not too far from me. And one of the things, and I hope I'm not talking out of turn, but one of the things he was saying was he was sponsoring the local football team yesterday. So his wife was, that he's here, but his wife was at a dinner to do with the local football team where he was sponsoring it. How many people here give to their community? That's why the post office is still in existence, not because of the board of Post Office, not because of the general or the group executive of the Post Office, but because of you as individual postmasters and what you've done for year after year after year after year within your Post Office. You've got an investment in this business, but yet when it comes to that investment, the government and the Post Office seem to think they can do what they like with it. Here's a way in which that changes. And actually, what we do is we bring everybody in. I believe mutualisation will happen at one point. But Ying was asking me this morning, what's my view of the future of the Post Office? In one sense, I can think, okay, we could have a positive future, but there's other aspects about it that really cause me concern. I'm not seeing anything coming out from government that's giving me any confidence about the future of the business. I don't think they've got any ideas, unfortunately. It'll be interesting to see what the minister has to say. And he's a good man, by the way, and I think he definitely wants to do the right thing. But I listened to his speech last year, and I don't know how any of you sort of felt. I wrote one thing down. It was the only thing I wrote down from his speech, and that was, there's no silver bullet. Nothing's changed in the last year that's given me any sort of confidence. I'm not seeing anything from the General Executive of the Post Office that's given me sort of much confidence either. But I do believe that, mails is growing. I do believe that as banks exit the network, communities, the Post Office remains, and we've got a bright future in there. I do believe within travel and other sort of products, we can actually eke out sort of a very good living, as long as we're given the tools and the support by the Post Office. I believe that if we actually, where is Dipesh? Not to embarrass him, where are you, Dipesh? Come on, put your hand up. Where are you? There he is there, right? Listen to what his customers sort of are saying about him. There's 11,500 post offices around the country. If we can get all of our customers saying exactly what Dipesh's customers saying about him, what a difference we would actually make. I do believe we do have a future, but rather than us, in essence, working against each other all the time, we're only going to survive if we actually do it together. And that brings everybody into an equal share. That's the thing about it. It's no longer government dictating, because they're going to have to come to this oversight committee, and the oversight committee is going to be able to say, government, not good enough, go and do something better. The management of the Post Office are going to come along and sort of say, this is what we're planning to do. No, not good enough, go and do something better. They're not going to just have to listen to the NFSP CW and Unite, they're going to have to listen to these people over here as well, community champions with a different viewpoint, a different perspective, and a different need that you are supplying. I fundamentally believe that this is the way forward. And I believe we can be something, make a difference for the communities up and down the country, because without the Post Office, you know that your customers that you serve, that if you're not there, there's going to be a lot of your customers that are going to be worse off. So I do believe we can actually do something. Yes.
No, I think that's wonderful. I've been here only for a few years, but before I've had a long career in corporate.
By the way, can I just sort of say, we've got chartered accountant and then chartered accountant, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Any more chartered accountants in here?
Yeah. Though I'm a chartered accountant, I basically worked in big corporates as a finance director before I retired from there. So I'm looking at here, coming from a different point of view, I'm looking at it structurally. When I look at it, why do we have all these problems over the years, and why is Horizon?
So I'm getting a high five sort of from there. So I think you might be the last question.
Yeah. So I look at it and I look at the structure. When you have an organization, it has to be there for the long term, and there have to be stakeholders who have got a long-term view of the future. And when I look at all the stakeholders around, I only see two categories of customers who have a long-term stake in the financial health and the success of the post office network. One is the postmasters themselves, and the second is our customers. Yep. When I look at the other two power centers, one is the government, who have a 5-year span, and whose postal office minister can change at whim. And today, Kevin Holyroke may be here. 6 months later, he may not be here at all. Neither will his government. So when we look at that, that's a power center. Then we look at Post Office Limited, and that boggles my mind. Where did these guys come from and snatch all the power away? When I look at it, basically, they have a 2 or 5 year tenure at most. Yep. I have seen, since I've come, all these guys who've been saying a lot of grand things have come and gone. And there's no sign of them yet, and they've gone on to pastures anew. So these two centers of power that we have, most of the time we are in an adversarial relationship with them. It's like pulling teeth to get anything done. They foist things upon us. The other way I can look at the government is, it's like an absentee landlord. You put up a house, and then you put up a tenant in there, and then you're gone. You're taking vacations, a world cruise, and the tenant does whatever he wants. Now, who on earth put the post office limited and its people out there and give them all the power with no responsibility at all? They're not answerable, they're not accountable to anybody, least of all an absentee government. So, Calum, first of all, we've got to change that structure. The power and the decision-making that affects our lives, and so many lives, cannot be in the hands of managers of Post Office Limited, who are at most going to be there for 2 to 5 years. Yep. That's got to change first. The Oversight Committee, I think, is a good idea. But again, it's in the details. The devil is going to be in the details. Who is going to call are there recommendations only recommendatory or obligatory? Eventually, do the managers of the Post Office Limited still have the power to say, I hear you, but I'm going to disregard it? Yes, that's all great outside. So far, these guys have shown a tendency towards doing what they want, how they want, and when they want. Now, that's got to change. Now, so far, when I look at it, if this Horizon scandal has put them on the back foot, they are with the backs to the wall trying to dig out of a hole, and at best they can say, oh, sorry, but I didn't know. I didn't open the attachment. I didn't do this. Sorry, I didn't know. They are in a hole, and they're digging. Now, if you cannot win the fight at this time, when they got the backs to the wall, then I fear a year later, this will be forgotten.
I think, you know, and it is... I really can't add anything to that, because you've actually summed it up succinctly. And it is sort of the issue, and it's why sort of it needs to be changed. The governance needs to change. And it's why sort of we're doing it. It's why we're presenting it sort of to you as colleagues. Pull it apart. If we've got it wrong, tell us. The only way we're going to get it right is if we tap into your experience and your knowledge. This isn't me coming along telling you what's this. You know, this is our formula. This is what we're thinking about this moment. But we're open to suggestions if you think that there's actually it could be better. But what I do know is the governance fundamentally has to change. Because if the governance doesn't change, then the Post Office will continue sort of doing exactly as you described. Over the last 20 years, there's been 20 Postal Services Ministers. That's an average of one a year. They're hardly in the door. They're hardly even warming sort of warming the seat before the revolving door sort of goes again. As far as chief executives of the Post Office, Nick Reed's been in for 5 years. Would you sort of say that things have improved? Would you sort of say that things have sort of got any better? But again, it comes back to it, is it all his fault? Is it the fact that actually, in essence, whilst he might be trying to change the ship or the direction of the ship is actually fighting back against him? Something fundamental has to be done to shock this organisation into a reset, in one sense, so that we can actually change its thinking and change its culture. And rather than it being organised for a few, it's organised for the many. And I believe this is how we can do it.
I'm just going to cut you short. So
that's fine.
One last question, I think, from David, and we're going to have to come to a break.
Sorry, Calum. 3 quick things. How are Citizens Advice, Age UK, and those other organisations funded? We could look at them. And of course, how are the post offices abroad in other countries? How is post office funded? And don't you think there's a position for the digitally excluded? Because the banks are spending a fortune on getting staff to look after the digitally excluded. That is a position that we should take up as well. I know we are, post office is, but that is definitely a big opening. The banks are spending a fortune on that.
Mm-hmm. So that'll be part, as far as how sort of post offices abroad, some Say like France and Italy, so they have, they set up a post bank, so like a few decades ago, and that's what's actually funded, keeps funding sort of them. And in one sense, okay, we could sort of look at sort of those things, but I do believe that we should, as a business, it'd be better if we actually had things that were under our control rather than us actually being, in essence, master or slaves to others. You know, if we look at it, when Royal Mail went on strike in the December of 22, January of 23, how much did that cost you in lost business? You know, how many of you here actually had drop-and-go customers that Royal Mail have come along and half-inched? Okay, so we've got to sort of understand, or sort of the banks, as you sort of say, I mean, one of the things that sort of I'm hearing about is as the banks go out, they're trying to encourage all their customers to go digital, go digital, go digital. But I do think there will always be a section that will be digitally excluded, and I think that is an area that we could serve. So I do think there are opportunities for us out there, but we've got to sort of get the structure right. And what I'm talking about is actually the foundations. If we don't have the right foundations, there's no point in building anything on it because the foundations won't support it. And if we don't have the culture right, the culture has to be right. As they would say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So in other words, if you don't have the right culture, you could have the best ideas, but you'll never implement them. Because actually what I need, if we're going to change the culture of the NFSP, if we're going to change the culture of the network, if you're not prepared to change, doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong. Doesn't matter whether I've got the best idea of actually do it. But if you're not prepared to change, it ain't going to happen. You're going to need to help me. Okay? So as far as the post office is concerned, just to sort of give you an idea, and I'll close on this, Robert, as dancing away quite the thing. I'll close on this. I did have a meeting. Tim and I had a meeting sort of with the post office in relation, and we introduced this to us, and their response was, we're not going to do anything that's going to change the culture of the post office. We're not interested in it. So there's your closed-minded sort of aspect straight away. The individual wasn't very happy when I told them that they were an employee of the post office, which is owned by the government, and if the government says that they're going to change, they're going to have to change, or if they're not, they need to look elsewhere. So, you know, we've got a fundamental problem because the post office doesn't want to change. But I do believe that if we change, they're going to have to change. So let's get that right. Let's work on that together. And I do mean let's work on that together. I've never been an exclusive person. I've always been an inclusive person. I'm not going to do it on my own. I can't do it on my own. I am but a mere man. That's all I am, nothing more and nothing less, ladies. So don't expect too much of me, all right? But with your help, I do believe, and I'm very conscious of how close I am to this, I do believe that with your help, we can make the difference that you need as investors in this business. And on that, I will thank you.